on leave at the end of April, having come back from another voyage, when I received my joining instructions for a particular ship. My joining instructions are here in my hand, the very ones. I looked at these and they were quite different from any joining instructions I'd had previously for any other ship. Normally, you're in the Merchant Navy, you're either at sea or at home on leave. There are no shore stations, no barracks. The Merchant Navy operates differently from the military. So, normally my joining instructions would have been a telegram, which would say, join such and such a ship in such and such a port at a particular date and time. And I would take with me my gear. I would take gear for the world, because I had no idea where the ship was going to go. So you took gear for the tropics, you took gear for the Arctic, and you took that with you. These instructions were quite different. For a start, they were headed Liberation of Europe. Now, we all knew in those days that we were about to land somewhere in Europe. No one knew where or when. It could have been on the Mediterranean coast, it could have been in the English Channel, as it was. But that was the start of it, the piece of paper with the words Liberation of Europe. And the difference between joining a normal ship and having the normal joining instructions were in one of the paragraphs of this piece of paper, which is headed Clothing. And it tells me you should not take with you more than one change of outer clothing or 2 changes of underclothing. And I said to my father, this looks a bit difficult. I said, I hope I'm not the only one. He assured me that there would be others. And so it proved to be. So I was sent to Liverpool. My joining instructions told me to join this particular ship in Liverpool, which was a brand new ship, straight out of the dockyard, full of bits and things that were not right, as new ships always are. They've got to be put right. And this was the 10th of May, 1944. To start with, the ship had a skeleton crew. The ship of the size that I'm talking about would normally have a crew of about 50 men, and we had 40. And the wireless room, which would normally have a complement of 3 radio officers, only had 2. This was because there weren't enough men to go around. The number of ships that were being marshalled, ready for the attack on the French coast, was so large that the authorities had used up all the available people. So most of the ships that went to Normandy were with a skeleton crew. I made my way to Liverpool. I joined the ship on the 10th of May, and we sailed around and were stopped at Methil Roads, which is on the east coast of Scotland. And with about 40 or 50 other merchant ships, we laid there waiting for orders, knowing not in any shape or form where it was the orders were likely to send us. And about the end of May, we made our way down, after instruction of course, we made our way down to the London docks. And in the London docks, things started to happen that directed us to understand that what we were going to be involved with was going to be very special indeed. We were fitted with extra anti-aircraft guns to start with, and on the wings of the bridge of the ship, on each side, a big 6 foot by 6 foot board, hinged in the middle, was bolted. And painted on the board, in the case of my ship, was MT-162. We had no idea what this was for. And when it was fitted, the board was folded in the middle on hinges. It was folded up so that no one could see what the board had written on it. The sides of both sides of the ship, the name of the ship was painted in 3-foot-high letters, so it could be seen from a long way off. So here we are, we were prepared. We still at this stage had no idea where it was that we were going. And then they started to load us, and they loaded us with motor transport, and immediately MT on the board, motor transport. We got the message. They loaded us with motor transport, Bren gun carriers, tanks, and then on the 1st of June, the soldiers arrived, and 600 soldiers were loaded into the hold of the ship, complete with their equipment. We sailed from the London docks about the 4th of June, bound for orders which had not yet been opened by the captain. We come down the London River, and about halfway between the London docks and that place, which is at the end of the Thames, a famous seaside place. That's it. That's the We had instructions to stop at what was the place again? Southend. Southend, that's right. We had instructions to stop and anchor at Southend. When I say we, there were 30 merchant ships in this particular flotilla, all with similar cargoes and similar numbers of soldiers on board. So we anchor at Southend. What we didn't know, of course, which we know from history now, is that Eisenhower and his executives had studied the weather reports for the English Channel at that time, and they decided that it was too rough to land soldiers in flimsy landing craft on the beach in Normandy at that time. So they stopped the exercise. Some of them, those who had left the Channel ports, Portsmouth, Southampton for example, were already halfway across the Channel, and they were brought back. These are men in a flimsy landing craft, not used to the sea, already seasick, brought back to England, and not allowed ashore. They were kept in the landing craft. You can imagine the conditions in which they were in these flimsy ships. The following day we had our orders again, and this time it was to proceed. So we up anchor and we proceed. It's now about midnight on the 5th of June. It's dark, of course, and subsequently we never crossed the Channel or went through the Dover Straits unless it was dark, because the enemy in the Dover Straits were the German E-boats. These are motor torpedo boats, of which they had many, which were operating from places like Belgium and Holland. We were escorted by British destroyers and corvettes, but there was a battle every time we went through the Dover Straits. You can imagine without more detail what that would be like. We lost ships, and eventually at dawn on the 6th of June we anchored off a place in France which the British of course would call Arromanches, which of course I understand the French call Arromanches. It's dawn on the 6th of June. The first wave has already gone. They were the landing craft that came across straight from Portsmouth and Southampton. They'd already landed. Outside us, the 30 ships I mentioned out in the flotilla, we were all anchored off Gold Beach. All the landing beaches were named. Starting from the east, it was Sword, Juno, Gold, Omaha, Utah. And then you're up against the Cherbourg Peninsula, the Bay of the Seine, it's that particular piece of water. And so we are anchored there, and outside us, we're about less than half a mile from the beach. Outside us are the Ramillies and the Warspite, two of our biggest warships, battleships, 16-inch guns, who were shelling the shore at that time. And the shells were passing over us like express trains. You would never know what the noise was like. And we, as I say, we dropped anchor. Our soldiers were brought up onto the deck, onto the starboard side. Was the side furthest away from the coast. So they didn't see the coast. We put netting down the side of the ship. Landing craft came out from the first wave landing craft, those that survived it, came back from the beach and laid alongside us on the starboard side, the furthest side away from the beach. And our soldiers scrambled with all their heavy gear, their weapons, 19, 20-year-olds. They scrambled down the netting into the landing craft. The landing craft sides are quite high, so they couldn't see out. They couldn't see anything. They couldn't see anything until they trapdoor, there's another word for it.
Ramp.
The ramp was lowered. So they left it. There they were, about 30 men to a landing craft. Crowded they were in it. They went round our bow and headed for the beach. And when they reached the beach, of course, down went the ramp, and they saw what was before them, they saw what they were going to face. I was standing on the bridge with the second officer, watching these chaps scrambling down the netting. And we both looked at each other and said, I'm glad we're not going with them. They were the men who did the brunt of the work that liberated Europe. We carried them there, but we had hardly any problems compared to the situation that they were in when they got ashore on the beach. We landed our men, and then we had to discharge our motor transport and tanks. More landing craft came alongside. We lowered them into the landing craft with our own derricks from the ship. And eventually, by the end of that day, the ship was empty, and our escort, 2 or 3 destroyers and about 4 corvettes, were there to take us back to the London docks. And once again, it was the E-boat alley, it was known as, through the E-boats in the Dover Straits and up the London River to the docks for the next load. I did 5 voyages backwards and forth, and on the 10th of August, by the 10th of August, the American and British armies had reached Cherbourg. So, and by then also, what were called the Mulberry Harbours had been built. So now there were proper landing places for troops and equipment. We could get into Cherbourg and we could use the Mulberry Harbour. So the expertise that we built up in landing people on the beaches, and knowing what the tides were doing and all the rest of it, were no longer required. So on the 10th of August, the ship was released from this duty, and we went back to Hull, where I come from, as it happens, and I was discharged, and I went home on leave. And that was my D-Day time, and it's something that I'll never forget.